All right, y'all. What's going on, everybody? We are back. We are back, y'all, for another track. Okay. Now we trudging through this album this year. We're going straight through. So we started with the mixtape. Then we went to the first album. Now we on the second album, and this one has been doing really good. I like the feedback I've been getting from it. You see, I got my bulletproof vest on today in case some because y'all for those taking shots. I'm always ready. But we've been having some good conversations, and that's always the goal. Sometimes things happen, sometimes things flip, switch and flip up, but it is what it is. This is how it goes. So this episode is a good one. I think that the guest is going to be great for this one, but also it's just good because we get to dissect, why things happen the way they do, especially with dating. Because last week we talked about, should we change our careers? We get to that midlife, quarter life crisis. I almost said midlife. And, they're 25 is 6, 7, 8, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34. And we like, things ain't going how we thought. Should we change our careers? Do we need to go back to school? And we had a good time with that one last week. And now we talking about why is it so hard for millennials to date? And which is the title. So why is it so hard for millennials to date? All right. Which, I have my theories on that and my thoughts. And we're going to get into that as we go along too. But, it is what it is. The meme for this week reads, unpopular opinion. Everybody is scared to date seriously because everyone is scared of getting ghosted. Okay. So that's one of the reasons. But of course, we're going to get into many other ones. Inspiration for this week. So the inspirations come from, don't laugh, the Trina song, Single Again. Lil Wayne got a song called Single. That was my song in high school. I remember I was doing it like in college, and I was singing the song, rapping the song word for word on my Snapchat. And this girl was like, you rapping it like you was in a hard relationship. You've been single for a minute. I said, wow, it be on people. And then a comment from this lady, or a quote from this lady named Alice in the movie called How to Be Single. This movie came out in 2016. It says, the thing about being single is you should cherish it, because in a week or a lifetime of being alone, you may only get one moment. One moment when you're not tied up in a relationship with anyone, a parent, a pet, a sibling, a friend. One moment when you stand on your own, really, truly single, and then it's gone. All right. Okay, so before we get into that, I have a guest today, y'all. I'm going to go ahead and let him come on and speak his truth. All right. What's your name? Where you from? And how you doing?
Oh, man. First and foremost, I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate that.
Yes,
I'm Troy Spry. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, so that's where I'm from. And in terms of how am I doing, I'm doing great, brother. I'm doing great.
Now, again, you another person from North Carolina. I told you, I keep saying I have to go up there because I keep hearing about this place. Never been. I have friends up there. I hear good things about it. I feel like North Carolina, and listen to me when I say this, is the new Houston, because before Houston became the city that everyone knew about, Houston was one of them cities. It was like a gym, one of them hidden gem cities that people was like, what's there? What's there? And then around 2018-ish, it just kind of became one of the popular cities. And now in North Carolina, I feel like it took that spot where it's like popping, but people don't really know. Because when I told people I want to go, they was like, what's there? I'm like, I hear too many good things about
it. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I agree.
So what is it that you do for a living?
Yeah, so for me, it's twofold, right? So I'm a certified dating and relationship coach, a speaker, and an author of the book "Teach Me How to Love: Why What You Don't Know Will Hurt You." That's kind of my passion, that's my calling, that's my purpose. But I also pay my bills as well with something I still use similar skill sets in as a project director for a pharmaceutical consulting company. So I have a day job, and then I have my business as well. So I do a little bit of both. I grew up in pharmaceuticals, essentially. My first job out of college was in pharmaceutical sales, then pharmaceutical sales leadership, and then the director level, and now I'm in consulting. So that's kind of where I am on both sides of the equation.
So when you say that, because I didn't expect you to say that, I think of when they say plan A and plan A. Have you ever heard that phrase before? Where it's kind of like, this is my plan and this is also my plan. So is this kind of like what you plan to do both of them, and they both kind of happen?
Yeah, absolutely. And here's the thing. I always tell people what I learned through my corporate journey has only made me better in my entrepreneurial journey. the skills I learned, the people skills I've learned, how to market, all these kind of things. All those things have helped me in my entrepreneurial journey. But I'm not the type, man. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm not the type that's just like, throw all my eggs in entrepreneurship and that's all I want to do. Nah, I like my paycheck consistently coming because it's a good check. You know what I mean? And it gives me the freedom to be as creative as I want to be on the entrepreneurial side. So I'm cool with it.
And that's the thing too. I feel like a lot of times people, they get caught up in like, oh, I feel like I have to do this job and I'm stuck here.
Mm-hmm.
But then they like, they don't understand entrepreneurship is hard. And so with you saying you can take those risks and be super creative and super wild and super crazy because it's like, well, I still had this job at the end of the day. And then you like what you do. But I think a lot of times too, people don't like what they do. I feel like that's the issue. They don't like, they just don't like what they do. And that's unfortunate, but it's good to see somebody be like, I still like this, even though after all these years. So now when you hear the word date, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
Collecting data. That's what comes to mind for me.
Okay. When you hear the word millennial, what's the first thing that comes to mind?
In between is what comes to mind for me. And I'll tell you why that is. Really for me, that's the generation that's in between, because you got young millennials, you got kind of older millennials, right? I'm kind of in the older millennial group actually. And so I'm kind of in between. So I've seen both sides of a lot of things, i.e. the internet, right? So I think in between.
Okay, and when you think of ghosting, what comes to mind?
I would say immaturity.
Okay. So obviously, according to dictionary.com, date is a social or romantic appointment or engagement. Synonyms include appointment, meeting, or engagement. Millennial, in this case, those that are from 25 to I think is like 44 or 43, one of those two. Now, my show is catered to those young millennials, so 25 to 34. And then if you go ahead and define ghosting, it says the practice of ending a personal relationship with somebody by suddenly and without explanation, withdrawing from all communication. So it's no point of asking if you ever been on a date before, and you just revealed that you're an older millennial. So have you ever been ghosted before?
Yes, absolutely. I remember in college being ghosted, so from somebody from another college, you know what I mean? So it's one of those things where you talking is hot and heavy and you think everything's going well. And then all of a sudden there's no more contact. Yeah, absolutely.
Have you ever ghosted somebody?
Yep. I've done the same exact thing. So yeah, guilty as charged.
Okay. All right. So you call yourself a reality expert. What is it that you mean by that?
Yeah, so I kind of coined myself that when I first got into the space because I wanted to say something that was different. I was always about being honest and real with people about the state of dating and relationships. Right. And so when I call myself a reality expert, I was like, you know what? I'm going to be 100% honest in the space. I'm not going to pander to people. Right. I'm not going to be the type of person that, sees what clickbait there is, right, in order to get responses to things. I said, I'm going to be as balanced as possible and be as real and as honest as possible about the good parts of dating and relationships and also the bad parts. So that's why I said I'm a reality expert.
Okay. And I like that because you said a lot of times I think we get too caught up in clickbait and trying to get the audience. And I said this weeks ago, my goal is to be effective and not just and be effective and make an impact and not just worry about getting the clout. And because at the end of the day, and I also posted this a few weeks ago too on my Instagram story. I think somebody had made a post. It was a tweet, I think, and it kind of went viral. And it was saying, if I see a bunch of people sitting around with a table with a bunch of microphones, I instantly scroll past it. And the thing with podcasting in spaces like this and YouTube is it's getting, not only is it oversaturated, really everything is oversaturated, but the issue is people just get on here. There's no structure. People are just talking. You hate to say it, it's just niggas talking and they ain't talking about nothing. And so it's good. And then they'll say anything to get the eyes and get the clickbait and get versus trying to get organic views and be, like you say, a reality expert. And it's good to see people still trying to hold to just being real, because that's the base word of reality. Absolutely. So tell us some of your current projects. What are you working on now?
Yes, a couple things I'm working on. Book number 2, well, actually, it's book number 3. I've got an ebook, then I've got my book that I just talked about, and then book number 3 I'm working on. It's been in the making for a few years, actually. It's one of those things where I've got the content, I just got to put it together. You know what I mean? So I'm working through that. Working on my first course. So I want to create a course so that people can kind of learn all the things that I've learned and what I've coached to people in a course, in a curriculum. So I like
Yeah.
that. I'm working on planning my next conversation party. And so I used to do these things called conversation parties pre-COVID. And I kind of
Okay.
fell off of them once COVID hit. But they're really dope experiences where like-minded people get together and we have good conversations about dating relationships. And low key, it's a way for people to meet each other. So I'm working on those 3 things right now.
Okay. Well, the conversation definitely sounds fun and it definitely sounds interesting. Is there an age limit, or do you kind of like anybody who you think would be a good mix? Just kind of come
Mm-hmm.
on.
Yeah, I mean, my audience age tends to come, right? So when I say my audience age is usually around 27 to 45, something like that. You
Okay,
know what I
I'm
mean? That's kind of
28.
the yeah, that's kind of the age range. So anybody can come though, right? I mean, as long as you write 21 and over, because there's gonna be alcohol there for sure.
Okay.
But it's dope. I just like to get like-minded people. The people that follow me know how I get down. So if you coming in there to create a bunch of controversy, that's not is not the place for you, right? Just like on
Right.
my platform is not designed to create a bunch of controversy, and that's one of the reasons why I've slowly grown over the years. I could be polarizing and it grow
Yeah.
like this, but I said I refuse to do that because my calling is different. It's bigger than that. It's about bringing people together. You know what I mean?
And that's the thing, and that's in a sense a form of selling your soul, because you compromising and selling your soul is not always selling out to the devil, although people
Mm-hmm.
do that. But I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying it's more so from the aspect of doing something that's not you to get something that you want. When in reality, we always know, we see several times in the Bible and other works too. The counterfeit comes before the real thing. So when the
Mm-hmm.
counterfeit comes, it's gonna be what you was gonna get anyway, but you
Yep.
had to sell yourself short to get it.
Yep.
So that's good to see. Now, tell us about the website Black and Married with Kids.
Yeah. So that was the first website that really gave me my shot, I would say. Right. So
Mm-hmm.
I was in the relationship space just blogging. And then suddenly this Black American Kids is the biggest parenting and marriage website that there is for Black people. Right. And so my 2 mentors, Ronnie and Lamar, run it, huge company. And so one day I wrote a blog and I said, you know what? I like the content that aligns with what I think and what I believe. And I was just now in the marriage space, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's not just married people, it's relationships in general. And
Right.
I submitted a guest post. And then I submitted another guest post and another guest post. And they loved the traffic and the attention they got. So they brought me on as a staff writer. So I wrote for them for probably 3 years or so, just article after article, man. It was really good.
Did it pay well?
Yeah, it did. I mean, for writing blogs, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah, I know.
yeah. So I mean, yeah. I mean, you getting paid, close to $100 a blog,
Yeah,
right? And you also getting. They had these contests where if you got the most views, you might get extra $500 that month or something like that. You see what I
yeah,
mean? So it
yeah,
was
yeah,
dope.
yeah.
It was.
And that's the main thing too, is it's all about exposure, and that's without having to compromise, which I feel like this is going to be a consistent theme. So that's good,
Mhm.
and it's good that we talked about that, because like I said, the next track talks about uh being married as a young millennial and how difficult and things that it can be. All
Mhm.
right, so now let's move into our other segment. What does this have to do with mental health? So as always, we know this asks the question, what does this topic overall have to do with mental health and how it relates? So as
Mhm.
always, I have a source and a few of them, but we're gonna start with this first one. So according to how dating apps can impact mental health by Lopez Whitmer, it says, as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, dating apps have become an essential component of the U.S. dating scene over the last year. Dating sites and apps like Tinder, Bumble, and OkCupid are suited to different tastes and preferences, with options for daters from every stage of life, from college students to older adults. The basis of dating apps is simple. All you need to do is create a profile, add some pictures, and write a short description. Then potential partners can like or dislike your dating profile by swiping left or swiping right. Today,
Mhm.
meeting new people doesn't require going to single bars or social mixers, and online dating is one of the easiest ways to meet people with similar interests. Whether you're searching for a long-term relationship or a fling, here's how dating apps can affect your mental health. So before we get into that, what is your take on dating and social media?
Yeah. So that's a big question, right? I think there's a lot of positive and there's a lot of negative, right? So if I had to break down the positive is the accessibility to people. Okay. And so one of the things people complain about is not being able to meet people, right?
Right.
So all you do with social media is you expand your dating pool,
Yeah.
right? So to me, that's a good positive side of things because you have more opportunities to meet more people in different places, right? And it can expose you to different types of people as well. Like think about it, if you only grew up in your hometown and you've never been outside of it, you don't know what other people are like other places, right? So that's
Right.
the positive side. The downside is a couple things. Number one is FOMO, so fear of missing out. So you got so many people, they can't be satisfied because it is so many people. So you got someone good, but you always every time you swipe, you see somebody that looks better or makes you laugh more, or whatever it is, and so you can't stay focused, right? So that's one piece. The other piece of it is social media only shows you the highlight reels of people. And so a lot of times what happens ultimately is you get caught up in the facade. You get caught up in the character in which they show you. And
Yeah.
then you give it those people and you realize, nah, like this ain't the same person. So a
That's
lot of times, like that's a downside to social media sometimes, but you got to take the good with the bad with anything, right?
right. And have you ever had a situation where you was dating someone that you met online?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, you got to when I was in college, right? That was when like Black Planet was popping, right? Black Planet, MySpace, AOL, that was kind of just starting, right? I mean, AOL had been started, but I've met people online as well. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I remember MySpace. I remember I was in middle school. I remember vividly. I was like 7th grade.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't believe in social media. I didn't get in social media until I was in 9th grade, and the end of 9th grade at that. Because, like I said, I'm sure it was the same everywhere. And I've said this on this podcast before. But my logic was when I was looking, every time I look about MySpace, I seen anything about MySpace. Somebody was dying, somebody was getting bullied, somebody was committing suicide. So I'm like, well, this is all going down on this website. I was wise beyond my years then. I said, well, I don't need to be on it because it's got too much going on. And I mean, it happens all the time. Sometimes you'll be talking to somebody just on some friendly stuff, and then it turn into something you didn't expect. And I think this generation, I think sometimes we may fall in love with that rush of, like I said, that unexpected. I'm trying to create an unexpected thing or fling. And then, that's, I don't want to jump ahead of myself, but that's kind of what leads to the ghosted thing. Cause then out of nowhere, you may entertain a girl, and then out of nowhere, she gonna be like, after y'all, she'll be like, oh, hey, we can't do that no more. I got a boyfriend. You like,
Yeah.
and that is kind of what you said. People fall in love with a persona because this person she didn't show that. She didn't reveal that. You was even in the close friends and you still didn't see that.
Yep.
So have you ever had, how do you deal with, say for instance, I was one of your clients, right? How would you coach me through that? Or how would you help me through that?
Through being ghosted or through what?
Basically, because have you ever had a situation or a client where it was like they basically came with a story like that? They think they basically fell in love with somebody, and we can take social media out of it, but they fell in love with somebody basically. The person, and it can be a woman with a man, woman, no matter. And they fell in love with the person, fell in like with the person, and then they hit them with that, like, oh, I'm married. Oh, I got kids. Oh, I was in a relationship. Hey, we can't do this no more for whatever reason.
Yeah.
How would you help somebody through that situation?
Yeah, I think the first piece would be to make them self-assess, right? So what could they have done differently? Like seriously, why were you in love so fast? Like what made you fall so fast? What questions didn't you ask? Why were you moving so fast that you didn't have enough patience for that to reveal itself? You see what I mean? So those are the things I would ask. I wouldn't blame the other person. I would say, you look, that's water under the bridge because that person is going to move on. It doesn't do you any good to go ruin their life or whatever it is. That's going to bring more stress. The question is, what can you learn and what are you accountable for and what will you do differently the next time? So that's how I would coach them through it.
Okay. All right, good. Okay, so now let's jump back into this the source where it talks about how this affects your mental health. So I'm going to read some of the what the website says, and then we're going to kind of unpack that together. So the first one says rejection. Some research suggests that dating apps expose singles to considerable rejection. In one study, researchers found low rates of matches from potential partners, especially for men. The study also found that approximately 50% of matches do not message back. As a result, dating app users are constantly being disliked or ignored, contributing to feelings of anxiety and depression. In addition, many dating site users experience ghosting, the sudden end of a romantic relationship without any kind of explanation. According to dating experts, ghosting can be dehumanizing, psychologically damaging mental health experience. Okay, so let's talk about ghosting. So we kind of briefly talked about it, but I would say to the person, say for instance, that did happen to you. She told you, you'll do whatever, you're a woman and the man tell you, hey, I got this going on. We can't do that no more. I try to always look on the bright side in every situation. So at least they said something, because they could have just never talked to you again, and then you would have been wondering what could have happened. I could understand with social media, the whole situation of like you putting yourself out there, especially on these dating apps. I've never been on one. Apparently, it was a fake Tinder of me years ago. I don't know. My friends probably be playing because they clown like that, but I don't know. But they said I was on 10. I was like, no, I'm not. So I'm like, I get somebody fake page. But basically, and let's get out of ghosting real quick. I'm not ghosting on social media. Say for instance, so let me ask this question. Do you run, or have you ever like thrown together like a single soiree, so to say, where it was kind of like a event for people to meet?
Yeah, I mean, essentially that's what the conversations parties are for. So people are single couples come, right? But I try to invite a lot of single people. I'll kind of directly go after single people and try to get single men and women together so they can kind of meet each other.
Okay, cool. And so then the second one says loneliness and low self-esteem. According to the University of Texas, of North Texas, a study, Tinder users experience more mental health problems than non-users. These mental health issues could be related to regular rejection and frequent self-doubt. Essentially, dating sites contribute to feelings of hopelessness and loneliness. All of this is driven by the overwhelming choices that Tinder, Bumble, OkCupid, and other apps offer. So, like we kind of just briefly talked about, in this case, it will be in these cases, a lot of times the people who get on these social media and these apps and things, they already probably had some issues, and then it's kind of made it worse. So it's good to see, like how you say, you have events where you try to in person, where you try to bring people together. And say somebody doesn't live where you live, and they will say, I want to go out and meet somebody in person and not get caught up in the whole social media thing. What would be some advice to them? What could you give that they say they can't come to where you at?
Oh yeah. So one of the things I try to do when I'm talking to clients is to help them balance in person versus online, scenarios to meet people, right? So if we're talking in person, I think the first thing I tell people is you got to get busy doing what you love to do, right? So if you love museums, then you should be in groups. You should be at places with people that love museums, right? If you are, an entrepreneur, maybe you should be at more entrepreneurial conferences where other people are. That makes it easy to talk to people. There's easily relatable things. You see what I mean? So to me, get busy doing the things you love doing, and then find community around those things. Okay. Or find things that you're really interested in doing that you aren't doing yet, and then find the communities that exist around those things, right? Because that makes the meeting process a lot easier versus I go to the bar and it's a girl down at the end of the bar and I got to go approach her and figure this out and send her a drink and all this other kind of stuff. So I always say just get around communities about things that you love and you're passionate about. To me, that's the starting place for sure.
And that's good too, because it just hit when you said that. That helps with those people who are socially awkward, because some people, they don't do the pickup lines. They don't do, hey, what you drinking? Hey, what you doing with that skirt? So everybody don't do stuff like that. So that in those situations, it just makes it flow and it's more organic versus this forced, and then of course, a lot of times, not always, but a lot of times on these dating sites, people just looking for sex anyway. And they like that the thing is, like I said earlier, that rush, and they like that forbidden fruit almost, like that.
Mm-hmm.
They had that rush of like, we ain't supposed to be doing this, and then that's
Yeah.
when it came out later. Oh yeah, they was in a relationship, and they was magically on a break, and they really wasn't
Oh
on a
yeah. They like the attention for the moment, man. That's what a lot of it is. They want the attention for that moment. They get that dopamine rush, like you said. And that
break.
social media is an easy way to get dopamine rushes. You know, whether it's somebody liking your picture or it's sending you a DM, and you know, all those things fire off dopamine. And so people love that. That's why social media is so powerful, right? And
Mm-hmm.
dating apps are so powerful because of those things. So we got to be able to separate, you know, the real from the fake.
Absolutely. Now the third one says it is anonymity, and deceit. I think I've said that right. I don't know that word. This
Oh,
a big word.
anonymity, it sounds like.
See, anonymity. Big. That was a big word for Elmo. All right. All right. So before the rise of Tinder Gold, Facebook dating profiles, and other matchmaking services, single people tended to meet potential dates in real life at work through mutual friends and family members, or at
Mhm,
social events such as weddings. In other words, their relationships had pre-existing foundations that provided a sense of trust.
mhm,
Unfortunately, these foundations don't exist in the virtual dating world, with some dating sites using users hiding under deceit and
mhm,
you know. So here's the thing. I think that that's good, as you said, just to kind of find something you love to do, and just kind of going out there. And if you're interested in multiple things, that's an excuse to be in multiple groups.
mhm,
And even if these groups do start via social media, you
mhm,
still can be the one that kind of push yourself out there and say, let's all meet up at this place. For
mhm,
example, it's a group message for Houston educators. They
mhm,
have events. We can all meet up, and you never know who you'll meet in there. And whatever it is you're doing, even if it's your job, even if you hate your job, if it's your job or whatever, it can be. You can meet somebody who you find somebody y'all both hate the job.
mhm.
They may
Exactly. You got something to talk about.
got something to talk about. They may even make a friend if nothing else. So I think that's good too. All
Mhm,
right, so let's talk about being single. So
mhm.
how many of your clients are single?
I would say 80%.
Okay.
80% of them are single. Single, trying to meet someone, trying to change their dating life, right? So that's a lot of who I get.
Okay. And do most of your clients end up finding somebody?
So here's the piece of it. I give them the tools to go and try to meet people, and I've seen many of them go out and find people, but I'm not a matchmaker per se, right? So
Okay.
I'm trying to give them the skills to be able to make themselves available, be in the right communities, that kind of thing. But at the end of the day, it's up to them to pull it all the way through, right? So, but I have a good bit of clients who have actually met someone after applying the things I'm telling them to do.
Okay. So again, so there's matchmaker, and then your title again is what?
Dating coach. So dating
Yeah.
and relationship coach, right? Which
Right.
is a little bit different. The matchmakers have like databases of people. They're designed to put you in connection with other people, right? Whereas I'm going to coach you on, okay, here's what you want. Here's the type of person you want. Here's how you can potentially meet them. Here's how you need to be healed before you go out there. Here's how your mindset has to shift. Here's how you can go about finding those types of people. But at the end of the day, they got to pull it through.
Okay, good. Because see, I didn't know the difference, and I just
Yep.
learned something, and I'm sure other people learn the difference as well. All
Mhm.
right, so now, um, with that, so let's reflect and let's move into my other segment, the weekly sabbatical, which we know this is a time to reflect and just kind of why? Why did this happen? So, what really, encouraged you to become a dating coach?
Yeah, man, it's funny. So if I tell you like just a brief story about it. So I've always been like a writer at heart, right? And I've always been enamored with the study of human behavior. I was a psych major in school, right? So I love the study of human behavior, and relationships always intrigued me. And so when I started blogging, it was just about the things I was seeing in relationships. And I'm like a hopeless romantic, right? I love to see people together. And so when I started writing consistently about the topics that I was hearing and seeing, that's how an audience grew. Okay,
Hmm.
so the audience grew from the blog, which then the audience said, okay, we want a book now. So I gave them a book. And then they said, oh, we need to read in person. We need events. So my point being in all this is the calling just took me on the journey. Okay, so it was always in me because I loved what I loved when I was younger. For example, I was the guy who was writing poems for his friends to give to their girlfriends. You
Oh
see what I
wow.
mean?
Okay.
I was writing the love letters for them. You see what I mean? Like I was always that guy,
Yeah.
because I was like I said, like a little hopeless romantic. I was kind of before my time, frankly. And so now I see the other piece of this story though is growing up, I saw the difference in outcomes with healthy relationship versus unhealthy relationship. Because my parents were in both. I saw when their relationship was really healthy, then I saw when it broke down, right?
Yeah.
And I always felt like the healthy part felt better. It was
Yeah.
better for me as a person, for my mental health and all those kind of things. So I said, you know what? I want to promote the healthy parts and not the negative parts. So that's how I kind of got into this.
Okay. And then you kind of already gave me the premise of your books, and the inspiration came from just life. And that's where really any creative, that's kind of where things come from. So if you could narrow it down, I would say social media for sure is one. But why do you think, well, let's get into this. Millennials are very hard today, young millennials especially. That my age range again, 25 to 34. I'm gonna give my few reasons. So one, I believe that I seen a post and it was so funny, and it said it was a dude and it basically saying, so I'm supposed to be chasing you and pay all your bills. I think unfortunately I'm gonna get into social media then created not only with the dating apps, but also has created unrealistic logics. And it said, oh well, he need to be paying all the bills. And oh, he needs to do all this, but at the end of the day, you have to do what's best and what works for your household. Because it's some men who be like, I'm going to pay all the bills, and the woman she be like, no, I'm gonna pay, no, I'm gonna pay all this. But some women don't like that, so it just really depends on really you. So I definitely believe social media dating apps. I definitely believe unrealistic expectations, and I feel as though, and just based on what you've seen, what else could you add to that? What do you think are some other reasons why?
Yeah, I feel like the millennial generation, especially the younger one, they're stuck. Remember, I said in between. They're stuck between traditional and modern, right? So they're in this place where modern tells me I need to chase my bag. That's the most important thing, right? I need to chase a bag, get money, and forget relationships, right? But what happens is over time they start to realize that relationships matter. Okay, so by the time they get into relationships, they end up realizing that they don't have relationship skills. Okay, because the bag don't equate to good interpersonal relationships. You see what I mean? So that's why you see a lot of trouble. Like when it comes to the dating piece, the key, what you said, is unrealistic expectations. So remember, social media, what it does is it gives you the highlight reel. So all you look at is how beautiful everything is. It's relationship goals. It's all these other things. Well, the problem is real people have real issues, real problems, real traumas, real you have to consider someone else. They have real selfishness. They have all these real things that we aren't ready for because all we saw was relationship goals.
Yeah.
Right. Which ultimately creates this lack of staying power. So they are on this roller coaster of dating. The first sign of something not going their way, it's like, oh, this relationship must suck. And now I got FOMO, so I can go choose someone else. I can swipe left and go choose somebody else, right? So you ever heard of these things called like starter marriages?
No.
Right. So a lot of millennials do this, right? Where it's like they, instead of investing in what it takes to really be married, right, and actually understanding that, they'll just get married because it looks good on the internet, right? It looks good. So then 2 years later, they realized they had no reason, they should have never got married. And so now 1.5, 2 years in, they're like, oh, that was just my starter marriage. You see what I mean? So it's stuff like that I think, and it's become okay in a lot of ways. It used to be where there was a little bit of shame when it comes to divorce and you're letting your marriage go. Now it's like people have divorce parties. You see what I mean? So now it's like, okay, if I don't like this person, even though I committed my life to them, I can just let it go, right? So that's another thing. And then when it comes to dating, like that's another part of your question, like why they struggle dating. It's that it's so many options that people have trouble focusing. Okay, I think that's a huge part of it. It's so many options. And then there's this low key entitlement piece. I mean, you hear people say that about millennials all the time. I don't necessarily believe millennials are entitled, right? I just think they think a little differently than people in the generation before them, right? And that's okay. But there is a sense of you owe me something versus how can I serve you, and that's what the basis of relationships come down to is service and sacrifice. when realistically now everybody's out for what they can gain. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's
Absolutely.
a long-winded answer, but that's a lot of it.
And it's funny because the source we have next is actually some of the same stuff. So let's go. So from an article titled 5 Reasons Why Millennials Are So Hard to Date. So it says first one, communication. It says, first of all, it's crucial that we stop for a moment and think the way that we are communicating. Text messages and instant messaging has somehow replaced all the phone calls and face-to-face conversation. The previous generations had already practiced that. It's practically impossible to find someone who still calls a person on their landline, which makes the whole communication process very different. That being said, millennials seem to communicate more between themselves, not necessarily through speech, but it does seem easy for them to figure out what's good for them and who's good for them and who's not. Okay. The second one, I don't even need to read the description. It says social media. We kind of went over that. The third one is interesting. It says social circles. It says there's a plethora of different cliques at the moment. There are hipsters, intellectuals, stoners, stoner intellectuals, goths, athletes, and who knows how many others. That being the case, very difficult to get like someone from a different social circle than you. So if you want to know how to get the guy or the girl to notice you, be sure it's going to be a bit more difficult if he's not from your circle. I believe that too. A lot of times people so caught up in their cliques. And then you got your people who like to network. Like I said, I've always seen people, in my family had different groups of friends. And I always had different groups of friends. Didn't even realize that it was like my mama's and daddy kids' friends, kids. Then it was my neighborhood friends. Then it was friends I may meet at a summer camp or at basketball. And then it was the school friends who I treated them like I hope people treat work friends. Like they just at school. Y'all don't come nowhere else. Y'all just here. And it was occasionally were a few, maybe like 3 throughout my whole school career, not college, that actually became friends in real life, outside of school. But, the fourth one we kind of touched on, this is expectation versus reality. It's only natural that we look for new things in a person as we grow older. We realize that we don't only want someone attractive, but a kind soul as well, and vice versa. That is why the expectation we have very often don't match the reality. And then the fifth one, which is not always, is the fear of commitment, which kind of goes along with ghosting, because sometimes people may really do like you. And I'm sure somebody made up arm in a relationship just so that person can leave them alone. When in reality, they probably did like them. They just was like, I'm scared of commitment. Why do you think this generation is so scared of commitment?
So I think it's a few things, right? I think number one, it's they saw a lot of their parents get divorced. Okay. So a lot of these millennials' parents had unhealthy relationships. They were together because they were focused on building something, right? A legacy. They were trying to get wealth and all these other kind of things.
Yeah.
Right. But there probably wasn't a lot of romanticized relationships back then. Now everything's more romanticized. So what happens ultimately is the reasons that your parents, if they stayed together, it was probably toxic a lot of times. And if they broke up, it broke your heart, right? As a kid, because you probably blamed yourself or whatever it is, right? Until you became old enough to process. So a lot of times that creates fear in millennials. They're like, I ain't touching that stove. It looked hot. You see what I mean? Or my mom always was unhappy, or she, these kind of things. The other side of this, though, is it goes back to that FOMO piece. If I commit to one person, I don't have access to all the other ones, right? Because you got to think, sex is easier to get now than ever. You see what I mean? So like when you swipe and you can do it like it's nothing. So when I commit, I got to give that up, that potential to get those dopamine hits over and over and over again. And it also means I may have to give up something. Okay. And so a lot of us, especially younger millennials, they don't want to give up anything for someone else. They just want everybody to have it all together. And we come together and combine our resources. And it doesn't really work that way in reality.
And that's the thing too. And I think even with me sometimes, like I said, I live by myself. I like being by myself. Like I like being in my house, because when you get married, you have to give that up. And because like you said, it's a service thing. And I think a lot of times people get married just for that, it look good and I'm supposed to. And of course, I feel like not everyone is supposed to, but a lot of us are called to be married, and we will be eventually. But some of us don't want to get married because we have seen a divorce, and we don't want to get married because we mentally just like, I'm not ready for all of A, B, C, D, E, F, G that comes with it, because marriage is not easy. And so I think that's a lot of it too, because I feel like it's a good fear. I feel like in a sense, there's a healthy fear of commitment and there's a negative and an unhealthy fear of commitment.
Yeah.
And so the healthy fear is I want to be able to give my all to somebody without, worrying about myself. And I know I'm real selfish right now. Then unhealthy is I got all the holes and I ain't trying to dump them at the moment.
Yeah. And you know what was funny, man, is I'm okay with people waiting later to get married. I think it's a good thing. I think even the data would suggest that if people get married, I think 28 plus, their marriages tend to last, I forget the exact number, but a lot longer, right? Because by that time you've developed some sort of identity, right? You've got identity. You're establishing your career a little bit more. You got some other things together versus when you like early 20s and you trying to go through that roller coaster of life in your 20s and you try to combine that with someone else, sometimes you're not in a position to sacrifice as much. You see what I mean? So I don't think when I say commitment, it's not necessarily negative that people have that healthy fear of commitment. It becomes negative when it's because of like selfishness, just selfishness, right? To me, now you got to check and say, okay, why can't I commit to anything?
All right, good stuff. All right, so now ending off on that good note, we're going to go into the final segment for the day, game time. All right, so today's game time is titled Ready to Mingle. I'm going to name a few scenarios, and the dating coach and reality expert is going to give us what would his suggestion be to the person who this happened to. All right, okay. You ready?
Yep, let's do it.
All right, so the first one. What would you suggest to someone who recently just got out of a bad relationship with someone who they've been with 5+ years?
Oh man, take the time to heal. Take the time to heal and self-assess. To me, if you go from relationship to relationship without learning anything because you didn't take the time to self-reflect, you're just doomed to repeat the next pattern, right? So for me, take time to yourself to self-reflect and heal.
All right, second one. What would you suggest to someone who wants to date someone via the internet that they never met in person?
They never met in person. If they're meeting someone on the internet, that's okay. But I always coach my client to get in person quicker, sooner than later, right? So if you're never going to meet the person, then what's the point? You know what I mean? But to me, meeting people on the internet is perfectly fine. Just get in person sooner than later.
Okay. What would you suggest to someone who constantly told you about someone who did them horrible and terrible in a relationship? They finally broke up with the person, and then the person comes back 8 months later claiming to be different and has shown signs that they have changed.
Yeah, I would say be patient. I would say, remember, it's okay to introduce someone back into your life, but you have to look for the behaviors and see if they really have changed them consistently. Can you really trust it? And to me, it's okay to give people a chance. I'm okay with that. But you have to look and see if they really changed their patterns of behavior. And that takes time for it to come out. But if you immediately jump back into it like it was, having, getting busy all the time and having the same patterns, nah.
And that's good too, because the thing with them patterns, the person, they're gonna show themselves eventually. And sometimes people be showing you, but you be ignoring it.
Yeah, especially when you are blinded by lust.
What would you tell somebody, one of your clients who wants to get back out there dating, but they're insecure about their significant weight gain? What would you say?
I would say they need to go lose weight. That's what I would say. I would say they need to go get themselves together, have a plan, get to a goal weight, and then go date. Because you and I both know when people don't feel good about themselves on the dating scene, they make sacrifices, they settle, right? And they tend to project their insecurities on other people as well. So a confident person is a sexy person, right? So if you're not confident, you're gonna attract people that prey on that lack of confidence. So go lose some weight.
All right, and that's the thing too. I feel like a lot of people, we had the episode a few weeks ago about how to bounce back after that grown man, grown woman weight kicks in. And it's funny because in that episode, I told my guest at the time, my mama said, because I told my mama, I said, that grown man, grown woman weight. She said, well, y'all too young for that. That don't come to like mid-30s. I said, no, not this generation. Because there's people, I'm 28. There's people grown man weight was kicking in 25. Because see me, I went down, they went up. And I'm like, what are y'all doing? But then
it's that post-college weight, man.
Yeah, I didn't have that. I thank God. All right. And the final one. What would you tell somebody who says they just got out of a bad marriage and they're wanting to date and they interested in entertaining someone who also got out of a bad marriage. So maybe within 6 to 7 months of that bad marriage.
I tell them they got to take their time, because a lot of times what happens, right, is you think you're okay until you're put back in situations where you can be triggered again. Okay. And so if you got out of that relationship and you never went, maybe you did some therapy, some counseling, something to understand the whys behind things, you're going to repeat the same patterns. Okay. So for me, I would say you need to be really patient with meeting people and with yourself, because you almost, coming out of a bad marriage, you have to reintroduce yourself to yourself.
Yeah.
And so the person you were in that marriage is not going to be the same person you are as single. And so you got to figure out who that person is. So you got to take your time and really, really self-assess.
And that's the thing too. I feel like people don't realize that, and they just want to and there's anybody who's just trying to jump in a relationship and jump into this and jump into that. They just don't know how to just sit still for a minute. So, okay, good stuff. All right. Ending off with everyone knows the question, the challenge for the week. Make sure y'all answering this so y'all can win free stuff. And then my question, the challenge for y'all is: do you think dating is easy or hard for us millennials in today's society? Why or why not? You know, a lot of people, you know, they still meeting people at their job. They still meeting people, you know, at the functions. I know a lot of people, you know, it's funny. My dad made the comment many years ago. He was like, when y'all young, it's easy to date because ain't nobody looking for nothing. It's when you get older, when they asking how much money you making, what kind of car you drive. He said, nah, it's just you look good, you dress nice, let's go eat, you know. Yep. So I think that's interesting and that's funny, but it's kind of the truth. So anything else you want to plug on your way out?
No, I just want to plug the book. I just want to make sure people, always tell people, like, Teach Me How to Love, or What You Don't Know Will Hurt You. It's on Amazon, or you go to my website, exclusivethoughts.com, and find it. So I want people to understand, like, I don't try to overly sell this book. What I do is I say, go read the reviews, right? The reviews speak for themselves on Amazon, and it lets you know. I think it's a good place to start, especially for people around that millennial age group. It's one of those books that's blessed people all over the world. And so I want people to go, if you want to get to know me, you can start with the book, or you can start with following me at Exclusive5 on Instagram. You can see the content. And I think I tend to grow with people as they follow.
And that's good too. And like I said, we're going to plug everything so that everybody can get to it because, you know, as I keep telling y'all, don't get caught up in what you see always on social media because, like, even with, like, say, for instance, I have some stuff on Instagram and YouTube that the numbers pop here and there, but on the podcast app, they're going crazy. So, you know, we can't always get caught up in what we see. So just keep that in mind too. Let that be the message too, especially for us young millennials. Don't always get caught up in what you see. People going to show themselves, especially if you think about marrying somebody, which we get into next week. My guess, he's a young married guy. He's been married since he was like 25, so 24. So, you know, and still married. So we're going to get into that. And that's pretty much it. So I appreciate you, Troy, for stopping in on us. All right, for track 8. All right, y'all, as always, PSA signing out. Always remember, keep your head up like your neck hurt. Remember who you are and make your mind up. Don't let it make you.